Now, I've reviewed a fair number of solar panels on the channel in the past. Many of those have been foldable, portable solar panels, and a couple of them have been rigid solar panels. And this particular one seems to combine some of the best features of both. It's basically a rigid solar panel in two pieces that folds up and gives you foldable portability that you normally wouldn't get in a rigid panel, but you get the advantages of a rigid panel. So I thought that was pretty cool. So this particular one, as I previously mentioned, is 130 watts. So let's take it out in the sun and find out what it does. There are the power output. So 130 watt rated max power voltage 19.2 volts, 19.02 volts. All right, IMP rating of 6.83 amps. So if you wanted to string a couple of these together in parallel or series, you would definitely want to have a couple of these specific 130 watt panels, because if you pair this up with a 100 watt panel or a 200 watt panel, you're going to be basically wasting wattage by doing that, and maybe stressing the lower output panel in the process. So that said, let's go ahead and get this thing set up. You can see there are actually rigid legs here with a little thumb screw to tighten it down, so there's some flexibility and angle. And but one of the things I like about this is it combines the stability of a rigid panel with the portability of a foldable panel. So you got to get the best of both worlds. Let's go ahead and put the legs down and see how it works out. Got that pretty well aligned with the sun. And you can see we're at maybe just shy of a 45-degree angle, or maybe about a 45-degree angle. All right, now since this is MC4 native connectors, we need an MC4 adapter to whatever our power station uses. So in this case, I'm going to use the BougeRV Flash 300. It seemed like a good choice. And turn this thing on. We're at 92% right now. But let's connect this adapter cable, and then we'll connect it to the Anderson input on the BougeRV and just kind of see what kind of output we get. Takes a minute for the MPPT charge controller to find the maximum power. So we're putting out 92 watts pretty consistently on this panel. So let me set up a 120 watt panel and see if we are actually producing more power out of this 130 watt panel in comparison like we would expect. So let's try that. All right, I've got my PowerNess 120 watt panel set up here, and this is the BougeRV 130 watt. So let's just compare the outputs from these two panels to see if we get any more output from the 130 watt than we do the 120 watt. So let's try that. So let's do the PowerNess first. Wow, okay, about 85, 86 watts, 87 watts. So mid to upper 80s, maybe 84 watts. And the cloud conditions are pretty good right now. Almost no clouds. So getting in the mid 80s. So let's see if we can do any better than the mid 80s right now. I've got now the BougeRV 130 watt panel plugged in. 93 watts. Yeah, so we're getting mid 80s, mid to upper 80s at times from the PowerNess, and we're getting upper 80s and low 90s from the BougeRV. So that's about what we would expect from 10 more watts power rating on the BougeRV panel versus something like the 120 watt rated panel from PowerNess. So yeah, so output is pretty much in line with exactly what we would expect. One of the things I want to do is test partial shading on these panels. This has a 9 bus bar design. You count these little lines right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then over here, this is a 5 bus bar design. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So these are supposed to be a little bit more efficient in handling shading. Now, it's not going to make a big difference, but I just kind of want to see what would happen if I put this board down here. So let's check the output we're getting from this panel. So now we're only getting about 34 watts, 24 to 34 watts. Now I will say the sun is partially behind some hazy clouds, some thin clouds. So I don't think we can compare the output value we're getting now versus the output value we were getting before, but I think we can compare the output value we're getting from panel to panel, since at least the partially shaded condition we're putting on these is during some fairly consistent hazy sun. So we're getting, it's probably going to take a minute for this to register. So we are only getting 9 watts out of the PowerNess, which is surprising to me that the BougeRV is that much better. Now the conditions really haven't changed, and so I guess let me move this over again. So we're getting 9 watts out of the 120 watt panel, and we were getting like 25 watts out of the BougeRV. So let's move this back over, see if we can get something out of that, see if we're actually getting better than 9 watts. It's going to take a minute. Yeah, we're back into the mid-20s. Actually, we just jumped to 50 watts. Not sure if the sun just changed there, but we were in the mid-20s there for a second. So yeah, from a shading test standpoint, this 9 bus bar design does seem to make a pretty noticeable difference, at least in this limited test that I've done here. So let's talk about some of my observations in the course of testing here. It does come with native MC4 connectors, as I mentioned, and it also does come with an adapter cable that goes to a DC 7909 or 8mm connector that the 1000 from Jackery and below use, and many other power stations use that DC 7909 connector. But it also comes with an adapter for that takes it to a DC 5521, which is also very common. So those are 3 of the most common connectors for power stations on the market. Now, and you do get, since it is a 130 watt panel, you're getting a little more output from a single panel than you would obviously from a 100 watt panel or even a 120 watt panel. And the price on this, the list price from BougeRV is, I believe, $279.99, so just under 280 bucks. And I think you might want to check in the description below. I think there might be a discount code for this if you want to check it out. I don't know what the discount is off the top of my head, but I'll try to put that in the description below for you if you want to see it. Now, one of the big benefits I like of rigid solar panels is the fact that they're more stable in windy environments. So if you happen to be out west where there's frequently a lot of wind blowing over the high plains or the high desert, those are fairly windy environments, and it's nice to have a panel that you know is not just going to catch the wind and blow away. So this one is very sturdy in the wind. I also like the fact that it comes with legs with little thumb screws, so you can very easily dial this into the angle that you want, and it's extremely stable. So I very much like that. Now, one of the characteristics of this panel that I'm not super crazy about, but it probably isn't a big deal, just something to be aware of, is that when you do fold it up, the solar cells are actually facing out. You don't want to store it without this sleeve because you will inevitably scratch the solar panels or dent the cells. I already saw a couple little dimples on there. Now, those might have actually been there. In fact, I'm pretty sure those were there before I got it. So the demo unit that they sent me from BougeRV probably had those in it already. So something that you want to be aware of, that just because it has this heavy nylon case on there doesn't mean you can't still damage the panel inside. So depending on how you store it, if you store it upright behind a cushion or something like that, and it's completely a non-issue. This thing will be absolutely fine, but just something to be aware of. Now, on balance, I actually do like the features of this panel, and I do like how easy it is to set up. You don't have to wrestle with 4 different legs on Velcro that keep snapping into place, and you keep having to pull them back out. It's got 2 legs. They're very easy to deploy, and you can lock them into place, and I really do like that. So I think this is an excellent choice. You get pretty solid output from this thing. It's also, I suspect, very easy to clean because of the type of coating that's on the solar panels makes it very smooth. So if you end up with, you know, a flock of birds that go over and you get some droppings on there, sometimes that little pebbled ETF style coating that some of the panels do, while it is very rigid and durable, they're kind of hard to clean. And so the smooth style makes it much easier to just sort of hose it off or take a damp rag and just kind of wipe it off, and it's very easy to get debris off of the solar panel because it is a nice smooth surface. So I do like that. So I think in this particular price range, especially if you can get it with the discount code, if that is still active when you happen to see this video, and again, check that out in the description to find out. I think this is actually a pretty decent deal. So even at the $279 list price, it's still cheaper than the Jackery Solar Saga 100, and I think this is a better panel. So I hope you found this information helpful. If you did, please consider giving me a thumbs up. I would really appreciate that. Consider subscribing if you're not already a subscriber. And that's all I got for you. Hope to see you in the next one. Until then, have fun out there. Now, as you saw, we got decent output from this. We got just a little more output than we would expect from, say, a 120 watt solar panel, as you saw. As you saw, I said that multiple times. This is the Department of Redundancy department.